Welcome back to Generation Influence, a podcast focusing on the movers and shakers working behind the scenes in influencer marketing and e-commerce. I'm your host, Bill Hildebolt, one of the co-founders of Gen.video, a leading platform in the influencer marketing space, focused on advanced analytics and e-commerce outcomes. My guest today is Tuan Tu. Tuan is the founder of Covet Branding, which effectively allows Tuan to bring his experience working at Coty, Revlon, and P&G on CoverGirl to bear for smaller companies as a fractional CMO. There are a number of threads to pull apart here, and so I'm looking forward to diving in. Tuan, we're going to dive deep into your background, but let's start with something to grab the audience first. What do you think the number one issue facing beauty brands today, especially the market share leaders where you've built your career?
Yeah, good question, Bill, and thanks for having me. I would say the number one issue is the proliferation of indie brands. So you have indie brands, you have celebrity brands, and then you have influencer brands. So the market is super crowded. Everyone is competing for the consumer's attention. So I think the good news is there are a lot of options for consumers, right? So there are a lot of different consumers out there. But I think the bad thing about having so many options is consumers are so confused. This decision tree is not so simple anymore. And so I think there are good and bad to having so many different options today. And I think to answer your question about the heritage brands, those brands are struggling for the most part because they do have this negative perception that they have to overcome that, oh, that brand is for my mother or that brand is for my grandmother. It's not cool anymore. So I think those heritage brands need to really up their game and stay relevant.
That's a great insight. I want to ask really quickly, it's kind of a sidebar question, but yes, there are so many startup brands, even down to, feels like half the influencers in the beauty space out there have their own brands. What's the success rate in your mind? And this can be completely anecdotal. I'm not asking for a true market research backed, scientific answer, but are most of those brands succeeding? The perception is that so many are doing well. They feel like it's drawing in a lot of, me too's. But are they all really succeeding? Is there that much market capacity? Or is the reality of all these smaller brands, sort of the reality of startups in general, that maybe 10% ultimately succeed, whereas 90% fail? What's your sense of that as somebody who's pretty up close and personal with a lot of these challenger brands?
That's actually another really good question. To your point, most of them fail. So there's this perception that they're doing great with the glitz and glam of this social media lens, but the reality is most of them are not making a profit, and most of them don't make it through the first 10 year of their longevity from a company standpoint. And then this is where I really come in, helping those startup and mid-market brands to really differentiate themselves so that they can effectively compete with those bigger brands with deeper pockets, and so they can stay in business.
That's great. All right. You sort of felt that might be the reality, but for sure the perception is that they're all just killing it. To extent even I want to start a beauty brand, but it's a uniquely bad idea. But there you go. All right. So
Well,
yeah,
if there's a need, maybe it's not a bad idea.
there's definitely a need for me with beauty. The idea of the fractional CMO, which is effectively what you're providing. This is an idea that's really taking off. Why is that occurring generally? I mean, what is happening that's driving this trend around fractional CMOs?
Yeah, I just think that the market landscape is changing so fast. And marketing and all the functions, right? Think of all the corporate functions. They all look to marketing to provide new ideas, fresh perspective. So, and I think companies are getting smarter to realize that they could actually save a ton of money, going through the fractional route while still getting that top-notch strategic guidance that they need to transform the company. So that's why I believe the fractional CMO route is a win-win. So it's a win for companies to not fully commit to a 5-10 year CMO, but a shorter term CMO. And it's a win for me as a fractional CMO because I get to work with all different industries and sizes of the companies.
Interesting. Okay. And what about it? So you talked about one thing, which is, the ability to see all these different companies. It also seems like a big challenge to do that, where, yes, I'm sure you've got a lot of great ideas, but, now you're kind of needing to spread that across lots of different companies and come up with these big ideas for all of them. Feels very challenging. So what was it about this path that was something you wanted to pursue personally?
Yeah. So, I've always wanted to help. I have always wanted to make a big impact wherever I go from a company standpoint, brand standpoint. And after doing this leading brand for 22 years, I feel like I have enough of a breadth and depth of experience when it comes to marketing and brand building to effectively help uh, small startup to mid-market companies to accelerate their growth. Those companies, those are the ones that need the most help because they don't have that data-proven strategic guidance that big companies have. And this is where I come in. This is where I can really help them accelerate their growth.
Great. Okay. And what makes Covet unique versus other consultancies when they're thinking about making this decision? Why should they choose you, so to speak?
That is a great question. I think other consultancies use textbook case studies. They hire really smart people, but they everything is based on textbooks, right? Case
Mhm.
studies. Whereas my consultancy, what is unique about what we do is all the strategies and the recommendations that we make are based on firsthand, tried, proven strategies that I have used in my 22 years career to accelerate the brands. So we do have a track record of accelerating billion-dollar household brands or disruptive indie brands that end up growing 10 times in the marketplace.
Interesting. Okay. Now, if I'm a one of these mid-size beauty brands, let's say I'm somewhat arrogant, which lots of my friends accuse me of being the case in real life. So, this feels like a realistic hypothetical. And I'm trying to grow my beauty brand. What are some of the things that you see are indicative of when a brand needs your help? Like, what are the gaps that they have? Is it the inability to think strategically and come up with the big idea? Is it the inability to differentiate themselves in the market? Is it the inability to use data to drive the growth? Like, what are the hallmarks of needing your services, so to speak?
Yeah. So I would say it's a combination of inconsistent growth, right? So when they are just trying different things and not really sure which tactic or which strategy is working, to me, that's where they need me, where I provide sustainable short-term, mid-term, and long-term growth. There is
Mm,
a format, there's an approach to brand building that is sustainable. It's not just, trial and error, but it's also using data, proven data, and experiences in my past in building the brand in a very systemic way.
got it. So if you're in one of these medium-sized brands and you're in a team meeting and you ever using the word "we're putting spaghetti against the wall," it's time to call Covet. Basically, is what I
Yes.
heard. um, all right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the big brands that you've worked at because you do have this incredible depth and breadth of experience. I want to know, like, in the simplistic terms as you can put it, what are the similarities that you noted across a Coty, a Revlon, and a CoverGirl? What are they doing consistently? And again, I know we've talked about they're struggling a little bit, but what do they do consistently that helps them sustain and maintain their market share and even continuing to be innovative? What are they doing? What does it look like for these SMBs to aspire to when they grow up? What are they going to need to have in place to be a big brand like that?
Yeah. So because on the common thread across some of those companies that you mentioned, everything that is in common between those brands would be consumer centric. Whatever we did from a strategy standpoint, from an innovation standpoint, from a marketing tactic standpoint, everything is around the consumer, right? In terms of who are the consumers, when are they receptive to the marketing messaging, as well as the product? What products are they looking for? So to me, everything, the common thread around those brands, those big brands, would be focusing on what consumers want. What are those unmet needs? Because uh, otherwise, you're designing things, you're launching things, you're marketing things that have there's no need for
Mm, mm, excellent. Okay. Let's shift over to my passion, influencer marketing. I'm sort of curious, in your view, where are we in the evolution toward influencer marketing in the space? Obviously, very far along at some level, but what do you think and again, this can be more anecdotal than scientific, what percentage of marketing effort, and I mean that as a blend of time and money, is going to influencer marketing at these beauty brands today? And do you feel like we've plateaued, like it is where it should be? Do you feel like we've gone too far, maybe? Do you feel like it's still growing, that eventually it becomes basically all of the marketing effort is around some variation on influencer marketing? Where are we in the beauty industry? And if you need to or want to, you can differentiate between big brands and small brands. But I'm sort of curious where you think we are in the evolution from none pre-influencer marketing to where we are today and where we're ultimately going to end up.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the pendulum has swung one way and another way in the past. I think it is at equilibrium, where I think companies are right sizing their influencer marketing efforts. Ballpark. I think they're balancing it out between the different marketing vehicles, right? Marketing is so vast. There's so many tactics and avenues and channels for you to drive awareness and consideration and conversion. So to me, I think it also depends on the size of the company too. So big companies with deeper pockets tend to work on full funnel media, from driving awareness
Mm.
using across all different tactics as well as like TV. So TV is still very effective, to all the way down to conversion performance marketing using influencers. But smaller companies tend to put more of the money in influencer marketing just because they really want to drive performance marketing and drive that conversion.
Do you think? Do you think in the beauty space, influencer marketing can be an entirely performance-based model, or do you feel like there's always going to be sort of that balance between getting as much of it to be performance-based as possible? You're still going to need what I would call sort of true sponsorships or flat rate sponsorships, whatever bucket you want to put it in, to gain the sort of the awareness, more aspirational influencers. Where is that balance in this particular vertical?
Yeah, I think you have to play across all the different tiers of influencers, right? So from micro, nano, all the way to macro. So, and I think it depends on your budget. So it also depends on where you are on your journey. But I think the key is it's really developing those relationships with the influencers first and foremost,
Mm.
because they their consumers, their followers can see through it. If that influencer is not authentic, is not wholeheartedly passionate about the product, it's going to come across as more of a paid sponsorship, an ad, versus
Mm.
if an influencer has been developing relationship with a brand over time, over like not just a few months, but over years, you can see that throughout their content creation and their advocacy, uh, they will naturally advocate for the brands that they love.
Mm. That's great. All right, I shift topics a little bit. Um, you are obviously a man working in an industry that has become increasingly female over time. It feels like one of the industries that females feel like they can own and have great agency and obviously bring a lot of passion. What does that enable you to bring as a differentiating factor? And where did you find the passion for it? And what would you say to other men who might aspire to be, to go deep into the beauty industry? Where do you think the opportunities are for men in the industry who may be coming up earlier in their career?
Yeah, I jokingly say being gay helps. So, but no, it's just using the product. Be putting yourself in the lens of a beauty consumer, whether it's hair care, skin care, makeup, fragrance. Immersing yourself as a consumer is the first step to being a great marketer. It doesn't matter what your ethnicity, what gender you are. I think it's having that genuine curiosity and interest in the industry and the category. I think it's key to success. My story is a little unique in a way. I was kind of like I grew up in this industry, so I have my family members. Many of them are in the industry, and they still are, whether they are estheticians, hairstylists, or nail artists. I have been in this industry, you know, for a long time, seeing them growing up, seeing them doing their craft, working their magic. It's really interesting, and I think for me, what is the so that's the passion part. I think the purpose aspect of it is seeing the end result, seeing those seeing their customers leaving the chairs, leaving the salons, feeling happy and
Mm.
confident. That is a great feeling to have, and that's what really got me into the beauty industry and then beauty marketing aspect of it. So I think you just have to have that passion. I don't think gender, I don't think any of that matters as long as there's a genuine interest and a user in the category. Um, and one would do great.
That's awesome. All right, we're going to have one more sort of career, how to get into the industry question, but we're going to end with that. So let's just do a couple more, a little forward-looking topics in the industry. What aren't people talking enough about in beauty? What's going to be the topic of the year in 2025, 2026? What do people need to be thinking more about now to be future-proofed?
Yeah, that's the million dollar question, right? So,
Yep.
and I am passionate about this space. Launching disruptive innovation has been a big part of my career. So, future proofing a company with innovation is part of the growth strategies that I have helped companies in my past grow. I think this idea of everyone living to 100 years old. So longevity is a big, big opportunity for beauty, health, and wellness companies to really tap into. What if there's a beauty company, a beauty product that launches that can help us overall sleep better, right? Live longer, feel better, right? So really going beyond just the surface level and going into skin deep aspect of it. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think that's a white space opportunity for companies to really capitalize on.
I mean, I love that answer. People that know me, which some of the viewers of the podcast will be, know that my sort of personal rabbit hole. There's a small rabbit hole around AI, but everyone's got that rabbit hole right now. I'm happy you didn't go there. Feels inappropriate for this conversation, but maybe not. My other deeper personal rabbit hole is health and wellness, and trying to focus on longevity, not because I necessarily want to live to 100, but I want to be healthy as long as I can. And one of the things that is interesting about that journey personally, obviously, it's got a ton to do with nutrition and exercise. But I think the people that are truly deep in it also appreciate you want to look good as you're doing it. You want the things that you're doing, the diet, the exercise, gets so much easier to do if you feel like you see the results. You feel like your skin looks great, and you feel like you don't have age spots everywhere, and bald, is a fact of life for me, but right, that you got hair in the right places and not in the wrong places, which is part of, growing old. And so all those things really play in. And I agree. I'm not sure I've seen the beauty industry respond to what I think is a generational product development opportunity that obviously the supplement companies and others have really gone after wholesale. And so I'm aligned with you. In fact, if you see companies that you see taking advantage of that opportunity, come back and talk to me because, we'd
Yeah.
like to help them and I'd like to know about them personally. I think it's just huge helping people retain what they perceive as their youthful appearance. It's always been true, but maybe it's been more true for women, and men especially have just said like, well, I'll take what I can. It is what it is. I think men are not there anymore. I think men want to look. They want to see the visible results, not just musculature, but skin wise, of the things that they feel like they're doing to stay healthy. And again, I think it's probably as much so, and even more so with women in the more general beauty space. So I love that answer. Let's work on something together there in the future for
I
sure.
would love to.
Um, Fabulous. All right. Well, then with that, I feel like we're coming in on time. I want to talk about something that you and I have in common, which is we both made the jump from finance into other areas. So we both grew up in finance. And, for the listeners, Tuan and I were talking about in a sidebar. My closest foray to truly being in the beauty space was I did a summer internship during business school at P&G. I was in beauty finance. Obviously, that did not work out. They did not win me anywhere near the beauty industry. But the project I did was, and I feel like I can talk about this now, even though I was under confidentiality at the time. I actually wrote a business plan for P&G about whether or not they should get into the hair coloring business and how they should do it. Should they buy versus build? I recommended buy, and then 5 years later, they bought Clairol. And I feel like I can talk about it now since it's been divested. So hopefully my NDA has reached its final course.
I think you're good.
But I was so excited when they did that, and again, I'm sure they did their own analysis that replaced mine, but it was at least directionally correct. You also made a jump from finance to beauty, so talk about that. Was finance a means to an end for you? Did you think maybe you wanted to stay in finance, but then just over time realize where your passion was? How'd you think about making that career switch? What advice would you give to people coming up and saying like, okay, I'm over here, but maybe I want to get over there? Just talk us through that history a little bit.
Yeah. So I've always been, good, I guess, analytical. The strategic thinking, the analytical thinking has always been a strong suit for me. And naturally, there's a strong correlation with math, with working with finance and numbers, right? So I like to think of myself as a storyteller using numbers when I was in
Mm.
finance. Yep. But I've always had a very creative side of me as well. So I'm more like, 50-50 brain, creative and then analytical. Um, but I wasn't able to exercise that when I was in finance. I mean, things were going great. I was really making an impact. I mean, you said it, like as an intern, you like do like real important work at P&G. So everything was going great, but I just felt like I couldn't see, after about 5 years in finance, I couldn't see myself continuing in finance and not exercising the creative side. And so I want to continue to be a storyteller, but actually want to also exercise my creativity. And so that's why I transfer over to marketing at P&G, which is it's P&G is a marketing company. I mean, they invented brand management, right? So I was like, well, let me learn from P&G around around brand management, and it's the best training ever for any
Mm.
marketer. And to this day, I still use those frameworks, those principles to brand management that I learned back in my my P&G days.
Wow. Well, that brought us truly full circle. And so for any brands out there looking for fractional CMO and maybe nervous that how do you know you're going to get some great marketing insights, but are you going to have the analytical framework detail to back it up? Obviously, Tuan is bringing both of those things to the table with you, the frameworks and the data and the training down the financial path from his time at P&G. And so shop with confidence, as they say. Tuan, thank you so much for being on the show. I learned so much about the beauty industry, which is great. Any last words you'd want to share with the viewers?
No, and I think, just another thought in terms of your other question about younger professionals in terms of switching careers. I think it's perfectly normal to explore different functions, different industries until you really find your purpose and your passion. Don't give up. Don't compromise until you find it. So with that, I think for me, I have continued to do what I'm doing is because of that, the passion for what I do and the purpose behind it. And that growth mindset, it is really important to me. So that's why launching this Covet Branding, this consultancy, is very new. So I'm exercising new muscles, but I'm loving every moment of it so far, working with clients. And we are actually, we are open we do have capacity for more clients. So if there are any interest, look us up, Tuan2 on LinkedIn or covetbranding.com. Bill, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show. And everyone who's watching, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Generation Influence. Have a great week.